Alright, so I want to introduce you guys to my new series where I'm going to create a programmer social media platform where programmers can share code snippets with each other, and I built this all using SvelteKit and PocketBase. So I already have the code lined up right here. You can find the link in the description to my GitHub, but let's see how it looks like. Hold on just 1 second. I am offering free coaching to those of you who need help in JavaScript development, Flutter development, and most front-end or full-stack JavaScript frameworks. If you're not opposed to receiving some help, message me through Discord at 8dang. I'll be sure to include my tag below, but remember, I might not be able to help with everything, but I'll try my best. But with that out of the way, let's get back into the video. So you see, there's a post with a header, and you can see the code, and there's hashtags with the user right here. We could open the user in a new tab, and you see we get their bio right here. We get their name, we get their profile picture, and we get all the posts they've ever made. So you see that on the navbar we only have home, but let's just go to create an account. So let's create a test account. Test at email.com, test right here. And you see that we get access to the profile and the settings page. In the settings page, we can change our name, we could change our email, and we could change our profile picture, we could change our bio, etc. So let's change our bio. Where you just say test right there. And if we go over to the database and we go over to users, you see that our test and we have the bio set to test as well. So it's updated on our database as well. So you see if we refresh right here, it's persisted. So now let's go to our profile and you see no posts are made. So let's go to the create page and let's enter in a valid title. Let's say test as well. Now actually, new post. And let's say this is going to be some TypeScript code. Just console.log test and then const test is equal to test right here. And then we have to add at least one tag per post. So let's add right here. This is a new post, and we could remove the tags, but let's just add a random one like this. Post code snippet. And you see it takes us to the page of the code snippet right here. So you see we could delete the post. We could like our own post as well. Right here you see. And we get the code with syntax highlight. And you see if we go to the home page, our post shows up in the feed. So we could also like the posts of other people. We could also see that in the database, if we go to posts, and let's say test 2, the one that we liked, you see that in the likes, it's a reference to two people, two users. And if we go to the profile, we could delete this right here. And we go to settings, and we could log out. Let's log in, test at email.com, test. Let's log in. And let's go to settings. And you see that our information is persisted. Now we could even delete the account. And remember how we like this post right here? If we refresh, you see the like is automatically deleted, because if there's a deleted user, we can't have a like to a deleted user. It automatically deletes that like from it. Alright, so in the previous video, I showed you a preview of the platform we're going to create together in this course. So the first thing we're going to do is open up the terminal and run npm init svelte. And this will create a scaffold for a Svelte project. Click enter, click yes, and make sure to click the skeleton project and choose TypeScript syntax. Then no additional options. Then we're going to install the dependencies. We're going to say npm install PocketBase. We're going to use PocketBase to interact with the PocketBase database. So then we're going to do highlight.js to do the syntax highlighting that I showed you in the previous video. And we're going to get one final package called iconify icon to simplify the icons for our application. Because we're doing a TypeScript project, highlight.js doesn't support TypeScript out of the box, so we're going to have to install the TypeScript version of it. So we're going to do npm i-save dev at types/highlight.js, and this will install the TypeScript version of highlight.js. Well, not the TypeScript version, but the types for highlight.js. So once you're done here, close the terminal and go over to the GitHub, which I'll link in the description. And you'll see in the README, there's a few links. One here to the PocketBase docs, but I found that PocketBase had some problem with displaying the rules and everything else was a little bit buggy. So I had to install previous version right here. So let's go. The current version is version 0.21.1. So I decided to install 0.21.0, which just fixed the problem. So right here, just go over to this link right here, the release GitHub, and install the one for you. Mine is this one right here. So once it's done installing, you see this? You see this folder? Let's drag it into the source folder, copy folder, and then let's rename this to PocketBase. Now, we're going to open the PocketBase folder, so PocketBase, and then we're going to do /PocketBase serve. Then, let's click the link to the admin UI, and then let's create an account. So right here, you should see the admin panel with just one collection, which is the users, and no documents. So if you click on this gear and you go to API rules, you should see the API rules. But the problem with the previous version that I tried to do this on was that the API rules wouldn't load, so I wouldn't be able to edit them, and it would just left the project insecure. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get an actual secure version. So then, once you're in the PocketBase admin, open up the collection settings, and right here we rename this photo from avatar to photo, and then we create a new field with plain text called bio. They're not forced to have a bio, and we're also gonna have a relation, which is gonna be called followers right here, and this is gonna be from the users collection, and this is gonna be multiple right there. And now in the API rules, right here we could delete the list and search, the view rule right there, and the create. And all of these rules, the create, update, and delete rules, and the manage rule, are going to be for admins. So then we save changes right there, confirm, and you should see that it's updated. So now let's create a new collection called posts. And right here, we're going to create a new field, which is going to be a plain text called title, and it's going to be non-empty. And now we're also going to create another new field, which is going to be plain text called content, and it's also going to be non-empty. Also, we're going to create a JSON, which is going to be tags, non-empty. And then we're going to get a relation, which is going to be a relation to the user that created it. So it's going to be a relation to users, and it's only going to be single. And this is non-empty. So here, let's create a plain text, which is going to be language. So the language of the code snippet that we actually want. This is going to be non-empty. And also, we're going to create a relations, which is going to be multiple, to users, which is going to be likes. So then in the API rules, we say the list and search and the view are going to be for everybody to access, but the create, update, and delete rule are going to be limited. So at the end of it, you should have two collections, one post, one user, and it should look like this. Alright, so in the previous video, I set up the project so we could get into the code in this video. So let's get it straight into the code. In the source folder, you see the lib folder. Let's delete this index.ts file. And then let's create a new file in here called main.css. Alright, so at first, we're going to import the font from Google Font. Then, we're going to apply that font to everywhere and apply the text color to everyone. So then, let's create a body tag. And if you want, you could create a light mode, but I saw the light mode was a little bit broken with the font and the coloring of the code snippet. So if you guys want to, you can include it, but for the rest of this course, I'm not going to use the light mode. So let's apply some styles to the body, and let's also set the CSS variables, primarily the color scheme, like the primary color, the secondary color, and so on. These three are basically for the containers and buttons, and the text color is, well, for text. And right here, you can find the GitHub link down in the description with all this code, but I basically copied the styles for my style of code that I like. So then we could close this file. And in the lib folder, let's create a new file called types.ts. Alright, so once you created this file, let's create the user type that includes the email, ID, name, and the bio. These are essentially all of the field data that we created in the previous video for the setup. And let's create a validate user function that validates to see if this user or if the data that we're parsing is actually a user. Now let's create a post, and these are essentially the fields that we created in the previous episodes for the post documents. And let's validate the post, and this is a big function, so essentially we check if the strings are strings, We validate the user. So we use this validate user function that I created right here. We check to see if the tags are actually valid. So if it's an array and if each item of the array is a string. We also check if the likes is valid. So essentially, we're checking every single property that is required for the post and validating to see if they're the correct types and if they are actually valid. So then we can close this file now. And here in the lib folder, we could create one last file called PocketBase.ts. And we could close this right here. So then once you're in the PocketBase.ts file, let's export a new constant called PB. Let's set it to a writable, and it's basically going to be a type of PocketBase or undefined. And now let's check to see if we're actually in the browser. So if we're in the server, we're just going to return, we're not going to run any logic for the PB. But if we are in the browser, we're going to create an instance of PocketBase, and we're going to load it. We're going to load the auth store from the cookie that we have stored, and we're going to set the PocketBase instance to this writable. And let's just import right here. So now we can close this file. So once you have the app.d.ts open, let's import PocketBase, and then let's set the interface for the locals, which basically the locals is the data that we're going to pass from the hooks into the functions. So we're going to enter a PocketBase instance, and we're also going to pass in an admin instance of the PocketBase. So if we want to run any admin tasks or any admin actions like creating a user, deleting a user, or creating a post, we could use this one right here. Now we could close this file, and in the source folder, we could create a new file called hooks.server.ts. So in the hooks.server.ts file, let's import everything. After we finish writing the code, we'll create the environment variables. And now let's create a function called handle. And now for the PocketBase instance, we're just going to create a new PocketBase instance like so. And we're going to do a try catch block, saying that we get the authentication from the cookie and we check to see if it's actually valid. And if it's not valid, because if it's not valid, it'll throw an error that will catch. We just cleared the auth store for the PocketBase. So then for the PocketBase admin, we do the same thing. We create a PocketBase instance to the same folder or to the same URL. And then we just authenticate it using the email and password. And if we don't, we just throw an error because most of the logic happens with the admin account. So we can't really risk not having an admin available. So then we're going to set the PB store to the PocketBase instance that we created like right here. So then we're going to await the resolve function with the events passed in with the PocketBase and PocketBase admin passed in through this event. So we're going to set the cookies to the auth store cookies that we have. And then we're just going to return the response. So now we can close this file. And in the root, we create a file called env.env. And here we'll create two variables. One's going to be the email and one's going to be the password. And you could create it like so. This is going to be the same email and password you used to create the account in the setup video. Remember, don't forget the email and password. So now I'm going to create them right now. So in the route folder, we can delete this file right here. And then let's create a new file called plus layout.svelte. So in here, we just add the script. So we import the main.css file that's in the lib folder right here. And then we import the iconify icon package so we can get access to the icons. So then we include the slot right here. And just to test it out, let's go over here. Let's go to the terminal and let's run npm run dev. And let's open up a new terminal instance. Open up the PocketBase folder inside of this folder. Inside this terminal. And we run /PocketBase serve. And now let's go to localhost. And now you should see 404 not found, and it should be like white text. Alright, so in the previous video we set up the project. So in this video we'll actually be able to perform some of the auth logic in our app. The first thing we're going to do in the routes folder, create a new folder called auth. And once you created this folder, we're going to create a new file inside this folder called plus layout.server.ts. Alright, so once you open this file, let's import redirect and layout server load from $types. Then we'll create a load function that'll get access to the locals, and the locals is just a reference to this right here, to the return of this function. No, not the return of this function, but to the locals right here. They're referencing the same thing. And then we're going to check if the auth store is valid. So if the auth store points to an actual user, then we're going to redirect. Right now, we need to run npm run dev in the terminal so we can get autocomplete on the auto-generated types. So once you run npm run dev, the error should go away. So then in the auth folder, let's create another file called pluspage.server.ts. So then we're going to import redirect and page server load instead of layout server load. And we're going to create a load function that'll take in nothing. And all we're going to do is just redirect us to the create account. But in the auth folder, let's create a new file called plus layout.svelte. Alright, so once you have the plus layout.svelte open, we're going to create a main. And inside here, we're going to create a section that's going to contain an h1 and a paragraph. And it's just going to contain some dummy text. You could do this by just typing lorem and then typing in the number of words you want next to it and then just pressing enter if you have emit enabled in VS Code. So then below this section, we're going to create an article and it's going to contain the slot, and the slot is pretty much just going to be the content that we're going to be rendering for each of the pages. So then we're going to create a style tag. We're going to make sure that the main has the full height of the window, and we're going to make sure that has a display of flex. And right here, it's just display, and it's just saying that we just have one child right here in the display because this is just the small version of the screen. So then we're going to say that the article has a display of flex and also takes up the full height of the screen. So in the section, we're going to say display none. So we're going to say by default, the section is not going to be displayed. And right here, we're going to create an H1 that the color and the font size and the paragraph, obviously. So then we're going to create a media query that says if our screen is greater than 550 pixels, we're going to say that the main has a grid template column of 2 items that both take up equal width, and the section is going to be display of flex instead of display of none, and the paragraph is going to actually have a width. In this media query, we're going to say if the width of the screen is greater than 700 pixels, we're going to say that the division between the article and the section is going to be 1.2 to 0.8, which we're going to see how that looks like in a second. So then, let's see how that looks like. So right here in the terminal, we could add right here, we could add a new terminal, and then we're going to open up PocketBase inside of this terminal. And then we're going to say /PocketBase serve. And then in the node server, in the node terminal, we're going to open up localhost. You should see 404 not found because we haven't created any pluspage.svelte yet. So then, in the auth folder, let's create a new folder called create-account. And let's create 2 new files. One called pluspage.svelte and the other one called pluspage.server.ts. So if we go over to the console, you see that we should have a gradient background on one side and a white background on the other. So in the plusserver.ts file, we're going to import redirect, and we're going to export a constant, which is going to be the actions. So this is going to contain the form actions that we're going to create for this file. Then we're going to say that the default action is going to take in the locals and the request, and we're going to check to see if the actual auth store is valid. So if the user is authenticated, we're just going to redirect them to /. So then we're going to get access to the form data. So the form data is going to be access the inputs of the form. So then we're going to get access to the name input, email input, password input, and then we're going to create a try catch block, and let's validate the input for the try catch block. So right here you see that we're going to make sure that the name is actually a string and that the name has a length greater than 1. Same thing goes for email, and the same thing goes for password, but instead of 0, we're going to say that at least a length of 8. So then we're going to check to see if a user with the same name exists. And if it does, we're just going to throw a new error and it'll be caught right here. So if there isn't a user with the same name, we're going to create an instance of a user. So we're going to create a document containing the name, password, email, and the email visibility. So then after we create this instance of the user, we log into that instance. Because this create method doesn't log us into the input, we have to actually auth with password right here. So then in the catch, we say if the error is an instance of error, we pass back the name, email, and password, and we pass the message back. So then we're going to do the same thing, but if it's not an error, we can't really know what the message is. So we just say unknown error occurred while trying to create an account. So then if everything goes according to plan, we're just going to throw a redirect to /. And now let's open the pluspage.svelte file inside the create account. So once you have the pluspage.svelte file open, we're going to create a script tag with a lang of ts, and then we're going to import link and button, which are 2 components that we're going to create after we create this component. So then we export let form, so we get access to the form data that gets passed back to us, and we get access to the name, email, and password of the form data, and we check to see if there's an error. So then we create a svelte head saying that the title of this page is going to be create account. So then we're going to create a section with the class of container. And then in here, we're going to create a form with the method of post, and we're going to use enhance, saying that once we get the result back, we're not going to reset the form, but we are going to invalidate all of the loading functions. Basically, we're going to restart all the loading functions to make sure that we are actually logged in. So then we're going to create a heading with an h1 and a paragraph tag. And then we're going to create 3 input fields and a button inside of this. So the first input field is going to be the name, as we saw in the load function, and it's just going to be a placeholder and it's going to bind its value to name. Then we're going to create an email input with the same principles, but instead of type of text, we're going to say type email. Then we're going to create another input container for the password, and below we're going to say if there's an error, we display the error inside a paragraph. And we create a button with the variant of primary, basically saying that we want the background to be pink, or at least the accent color of the app. And then we're going to say the size is large, so we want it to take up the full width, and we want it to have extra padding. And we say that it's going to be disabled if the name.length is 0, email.length is 0, or password.length is less than 8. And below we're going to say we're going to link to the login page just in case they have an account. So then we're going to say, do you already have an account? And we're going to link them to ./auth/login. And then we're going to say that the terms. So then below, we're going to create a style tag, and we're going to style the container so that it is a display of flex and it is vertically aligned and it takes up the full width of its container or of its parent. So then we're going to create a form, and the form is going to be aligned vertically and it's just going to have a gap in between each of the items. Then the heading is also going to be like the form, but instead of gap 1 rem, it's going to only have 4 pixels in between each of the items. So then we're going to create the style for the heading, the paragraph, the input field. So each of the input fields is also aligned vertically, but with less of a gap than the form. So in the input container is also going to be aligned vertically. The h2, the input, we're going to say that the border is the tertiary color that we created in the previous video. And then that the background color is going to be the secondary color, so the input actually stands out. So then we're going to make sure that the error actually has a red color to it, so if there's an error, the user can see it and see that they've committed an error. Then we're going to say that the link right here, this link right here, is going to be aligned vertically, and the terms right here. So now let's close this file, and in the lib folder, let's create a new folder called components, and inside of here, let's create a new file called button.svelte. So in the button.svelte file, we're going to create a script tag with the language property set to TS, and it's going to have 4 properties. One seeing if it's disabled, one seeing the alignment of the button, one seeing the size of the button, and one seeing the variant of the button. And the variant just refers to the actual style of the button. So then let's create a color with the classes of variant, size, and align. So each of these is going to be like a mix and match. And the disabled property is going to determine whether this button is disabled or not. And you see the shorthand on click. This shorthand on click is just going to transfer this on click to the parent component. So we're not going to listen to this on click in this function, in this component, but the parent that is calling this button component can listen to this button function. So then let's create a style tag, and let's say that the button has a transition and a text align of center by default, and that the button disabled has a cursor of not allowed, and that when the button is focused, we're going to give it an outline with the accent color. So then we're going to create 2 styles. Both of these refer to the alignment that we have right here, the align. And then we're going to say that the icon size is just going to have a fixed width, but all of the content is going to be centered. Then we're going to say that the primary color. So we're going to say that the primary button, both the destructive and the primary, when they are disabled, is going to have a background color of the secondary color. And then we're going to create the destructive, and we're going to say that the exact same thing right here. And now for the outline, we give it a border, and now right here we check to make sure that these are not disabled, and we give them a background color of the secondary color. And now in the outline disabled, if it's disabled, we're going to give it an opacity of 0.6, and the ghost is not going to have a border. So now in the components folder, we're going to create a new file called link.svelte. So now this link function is going to be very similar to the button function, but the only difference is going to have that it's going to have a href property, and it's not going to have a disable property. So then we're gonna create a script tag with the language property set to TS, and we're gonna have 4 properties. One is the href, so where the link is pointing to, the variant, the size, and the align, very similar to the button. And we're gonna set them to the class of the anchor tag. This onClick can be listened to by the parent function, by the parent component, and then we're gonna create a style tag. And just like before, it's gonna have very similar styles, but it's not gonna have the disabled styles. So you can find all this code in the GitHub link in the description. So now, once you're done with this file, we can close this. And now let's go over to localhost to see how this looks like. So you see, create an account and the background is black. And now let's type out a name, test@email.com, test. And now let's create the account. And you see 404 not found, but if we go to storage, let's go to storage right here. You see that our authentication token is created. So now let's go back to auth. And now we could open up the PocketBase admin UI. So right here in the PocketBase terminal, we could open up the admin UI. And you see that the user has been created. So now, if we go to the login page, it's going to say 404 not found. So let's create the login page right now. So now, in the auth folder, let's create a new folder called login. And here we're going to create 2 new files, one called pluspage.svelte and the other one called pluspage.server.ts. So now once you have this pluspage.server.ts file, we're going to create the actions constant. So it's going to refer to the default action that's going to take in the locals and the request. So this is going to be very similar to the create account form action, but we're not going to take in any name. The reason we don't take any name is because we're not creating any account. We're just logging into an account using the email and password. So then we're going to check to see if they're actually logged in, and we're going to say add the form data, and then we're going to get access to the form data. Right here, we're going to get access to both properties, the email and the password. And then we're going to create a try catch block, then validate the input to make sure that the email actually is valid. No, not that it's valid, but it's not empty, and that the password is actually valid. The reason I don't validate the input is because PocketBase by default validates the input for us. So then below this validation, we're going to log in with the password right here. So if you compare this file to the plusserver.ts file right here, you see that we both log in using the auth with password function. So then in the catch block, we're going to check to see if the error is an instance of error. And if it is, we're just going to pass in the message back with the email and password. And we're going to do the same thing, but if it's not an error, we can't actually send any message. So we're just going to send a message like this. And if everything goes according to plan, we just redirect them to the home page. So now in the pluspage.server.ts file, now in the pluspage.svelte file. So now in the pluspage.svelte file inside the login folder, we create a script tag with the language property set to TS. And we're going to import the link and button. And we're going to set the form to the action data so we can actually access the data that we get passed from the action. And then we're going to get access to the email and password. And we're going to also get access to the error. And then we're going to say that the title of this page is login. And that we're going to create a section with the class of container below. And then we're going to create a form with the use enhance function. And by the way, this pluspage.svelte file is very similar to that of this create account page, but it just has some minor tweaks like removing the name input and changing the login. But essentially it's the same thing, because you can see that instead of name, we just have email and password. And the heading is different, but the error is the same and the email and password inputs are the same. And then below this, we're going to create a function with the text of login. And instead of checking to see if the name is actually the correct length, we just check the email and the password. And below this, we link them to the create account page if they don't have an account. And essentially, we're going to create a style tag, and it's going to be very similar to the styles of the create account page. You can literally copy and paste. So right here, let's save this file. And let's close this right here. Now let's go over to the local host. Let's go over to login. And now let's log into the account we created previously. Now if we press enter, you see we logged in. And now if we try to access the /auth/login page, you see we're redirected back to /. So it's a protected route. Alright, so in the previous video, we created the authentication for this application, but in this video, we're gonna create the home page. Hold on just 1 second. I am offering free coaching to those of you who need help in JavaScript development, Flutter development, and most front-end or full-stack JavaScript frameworks. If you're not opposed to receiving some help, message me through Discord at 8dang. I'll be sure to include my tag below, but remember, I might not be able to help with everything, but I'll try my best. But with that out of the way, let's get back into the video. So, the first thing we're gonna do is open up the terminal and run npm run dev, and then open up a new terminal instance, and inside of that one, let's open up the PocketBase folder, and then run /PocketBase serve. So then we can close these terminals, and in the components folder, let's create a new file called post component.svelte. Alright, so once you have the post component open, let's create a script tag with a language property set to TS. Let's import all the necessary inputs that we need. Then we're going to export two properties. So we're going to have two properties on this component. One is the post and one is the auth model for the user to determine whether the user is logged in or not. So then we're going to create a content ref which refers to the div that contains all of the code for this component. So we're going to create an on mount which just highlights the content ref. So we're going to create a header inside of the markup, and it's just going to contain an h1 element, and conditionally if the user is the poster of this post. So if the user posted, we're going to set a form that points to the delete post action that we're going to create in a second. So then we're also going to create a button inside of here so that we can actually delete this form. So then we're going to create a pre tag with the language right here. So this is going to contain the language of the actual post. This is going to contain the code of the actual post itself. So when you post a post, there's gonna be two inputs. One is the language and one is the content. Obviously there's more inputs, but these are the two main ones. So then below this, we're gonna create a section that contains the tags. So we're gonna loop over the tags and just display the tags as a tag. We're gonna create a section with a class of actions. So then we're gonna create an anchor tag that points to the user that posted this post. And we're going to create an if statement saying that if the user has a photo, we're going to render the photo out. And if they don't have the photo, we're just going to display an icon, which is just going to be the account. We're going to display their name right next to their image or the account circle. And below this, we're going to add some interactions. So if the user's logged in, we're going to allow them to like. And right here, this is the use enhance function, so we don't do a full re-render. And we're going to create a button inside of this use enhance that every time we like the photo, it re-renders. So it updates again, and we're going to do a fade transition every time it re-renders. So it's basically just a heart icon that is filled when we like it and is not filled when we don't like it. So then below here, we're going to create a style tag. And the first one is going to be the pre. So the pre tag, we're going to give it just a max height. We're also going to give it position relative because we want to position the different elements inside of them relative to the pre. We also want to make the alignment vertical. And below this, here are the styles for the code, header, and h1. By the way, if you have trouble keeping up with the videos, you could always find my GitHub link in the description, and you could follow through copy and pasting if you choose to. And below this, let's style the language property. So a language tag is basically inside of this pre, we're going to display the language that the user has. And we're going to set the actions. So the actions is like the like and so on. And then we're going to style the account so that it is aligned horizontally. And then we're going to create the interactions and also the iconify icon. So the icon for the interactions, we're going to style it as well. Then we're going to create the light, and we're going to style the image and the account image. That if they don't have an image, we want to set the account icon to 32 pixels as the width and the height. And then we're going to style the tags so that every single tag has hashtag before the actual content. And that's it. Now we can close this file. And in the routes folder, we can create a new folder called parentheses app parentheses. And this parentheses notation in SvelteKit allows us to create shallow routing, which allows us to create layouts inside of this folder that don't apply to the auth. We'll see how that looks like in a second. So in here, we're going to create a new file called plus layout.server.ts. We're going to import validate user and layout server load, which is an auto-generated type from the npm run dev. So then we're going to create a load function that's satisfied that satisfies this layout server load and takes in one parameter, which is going to be the locals. And here, let's create an if statement saying that if the user is logged in and the user object is actually valid, we're going to return authenticated is true, and we're going to pass the auth model as the user model. So if they are not logged in and or they are not a valid user, we're going to say that the authenticated object is false. So right here, this is just defaults to false. And the auth model set to undefined. So now we can close this file. So in the app folder, let's create a new file called plus layout.svelte. We're going to create a script tag with the lang property set to TS. And we're going to import the actual data that we need to for this component. And then we're going to get access to the layout data that we created right here. So this just gives us access to the authenticated object and the object that we get passed down from the server. So then below, if you want, you can uncomment this and allow the highlight.js to apply the default styles to your code. So then below this, we're going to create a class. We're going to create a div with the class of main. Inside here, we're going to create an aside. So this is going to be the sidebar. And on the top of the sidebar, we're just going to have the logo. So if this, so the MD show property is just going to be like, if the width of the screen is bigger than a certain amount, we're gonna show code share, and if it's not, we're gonna just show CS. So then below, we're gonna create a divider for here and a section that contains all the links for the application. The first one is obviously the home link, and inside of this if block, we're gonna check if the user is authenticated, and if they are, we're gonna show a link to their profile, and inside the profile, we're gonna create an if else statement checking that if they have a photo, we're gonna display the photo. If they don't, we're just gonna show the account circle, and we're just gonna create a span right next to it that just says profile. So then below this, we're gonna create the settings link. And by the way, this is all inside the authenticated. So if they are authenticated, they're gonna see it. But if they are authenticated, all they're going to see is the home link. So then let's create another section below this with the icon links. So the icon links is basically once the screen is smaller than a certain size, having text as the links is just takes up way too much width. So I switched it up and went with icons on smaller screens. So then right here, we're going to create a link with the home icon. So as you can see, these links are the same, but instead of having text content, all we're going to do is just have the actual content as icons. So then we're going to wrap it on. We're going to wrap the settings and the profile links in a data.authenticated. So then we're going to say if the user is authenticated, we're going to show these icon divs, these icon links. And now below us, we're going to show some actual links again. But instead of these links being generic links to places inside the application, this is going to be a link to either the new. So this is either going to be a link to create a new post, or it's going to be a link to authenticate the user. So then below this, we're going to create another links, which is basically going to be the same thing as this, but the smaller version of it. So as you see, it's just log in or add. And below this, we're just going to add a main with this slot inside. So now we're going to create a style tag. And inside here, we're going to position the .main container as horizontally aligned. And we're going to create the aside so that it actually stands out. We're going to give it a background color. We're going to give it an overflow scroll. So it's basically a sidebar where all the links are going to be placed. So then below this, we're going to style the divider, and we're going to style the top, which is basically the header. And then we're going to style the H1, the main, and we're going to say that by default, the MD show. So by default, we're assuming that the width of the screen is smaller than we want it to be. So by default, we want it to display none, and the MD height we want it to actually display. And we're going to style the links so that it is horizontally aligned. The links content also is not horizontally aligned, vertically aligned. The links is going to be vertically aligned, and the links content is going to be horizontally aligned. So then we're going to style the iconify and the image tags. We're also going to apply some styles to the link content, the icons. And now you see that if the width of the screen is greater than 800, we're going to say that we're going to show the MD show, and we're going to hide the MD hide, obviously, and we're going to adjust the width of the sidebar and the icons, etc. So then we can close this file, and in the app folder, Let's create a new file called pluspage.ts. We're going to import all the things that we need, and we're going to create a load function that satisfies the page load. This is auto-generated type, by the way. And now we're going to get an instance to the PB store. So then we're going to validate to see if the PB instance is actually valid, so it's not null. And if it is null, we're just going to return that the results are not found. So then let's create a try catch block, and inside here we're going to create an asynchronous function, which we're going to get the posts in. So we're going to query the post saying that we want to get the first 15 results of the post, and we want to sort them by their date. So then we're going to return these posts, we're going to loop through them, and we're going to convert them into a post and record model. So then we're going to say the post is going to be the current, and we're going to say if the current.expand is null, we're just going to return the previous. So basically, we're expanding on the user. So every time we query a result, we want to get the user information. We say post.user is equal to, so then we're going to make sure that we set the post.user to the expanded version of the user. So by default, this post.user is a string, actually. And now that we could actually validate the post, we're going to validate it. And if it's not validated, we're just going to return the previous. We're not going to add this current post into the previous because it's invalid. And if it is valid, we're going to add this post into here. And we're going to go to the next loop until we finish the end. So now, instead of awaiting the get post, we're going to return get post as a stream. So in SvelteKit, we can stream promises from the server to the client, and we could get results as a stream, so it's asynchronous. So basically, this allows us to not fetch it in the server, because honestly, fetching it from the server takes a long time and it was really slow. So I figured that I would just send it as an asynchronous function as an await call, and I would await it in the client, and the client would take care of rendering it out and everything, etc. So now, if there are any errors, let's catch them right now. We're just going to say that the results are not found. So now let's save, and now we can close this file, and here we can create a new file called pluspage.svelte. So now once you have this file open, create a script tag with the line property set to ts, and let's import the post component from the components folder. So we could get access and display all of the posts that we get access to, and we're also get the data from the server. And now let's say that the title of this page is going to be home, and below this we're going to create a div with a class of container, and now we're going to say if the results are not found. So if there was an error that occurred in the server whatsoever, or the results were not found, we're just going to say that no posts were found. And now if the posts were found, or if we're waiting, we're going to send an await call saying that while we're waiting, we're just going to say loading posts, obviously. And then below here, once we get the posts, we're going to render them out like this. And once we render them out, we're going to say that each one of these posts is going to be an article. Also here, saying no post found, just like here. And now let's create a style tag. And you see that we style the container so that it is vertically aligned and it has a gap in between the items. And here you can see that in the article, we have some background, border, and allows us to style the content inside of here. So now let's check out the code and let's see how it looks like on the client. So let's go over to the server right here. So now you see how we're loading posts because there are no posts. But if we go to PocketBase and let's go to the admin UI, let's go to PocketBase, remember to sign in. And now let's go over to the post collection. Let's create a new record. And let's say the title is test content. Let's say const test is equal to test. And the tags, obviously we can't set them to null. It has to be an array of strings. Wait, test right here. And the user, let's say that the user is just test, set selection. The language, we can't say TypeScript because TypeScript is not supported by highlight.js as TypeScript, but it does support TS, so we're going to say it like that. And the likes, we're going to set no likes. So now let's create this record and let's refresh. And you see that we see the post and it's loaded. And we could even go to the profile of the person that created it. And you see that we haven't created this page, but you see that it displays it like this. Wait, let's add some more content into this snippet. So then let's say content like this. Wait, no. Right here. Like that. Right there. And you see that we get access to the highlight, to the tags and stuff. Alright, so in the previous video, we created the home page for our application. But in this video, we're going to create the create post page so we can actually create some posts. So the first thing we're going to do is, before we get into any code, we're going to run the command npm run dev. And in a new terminal instance, we're also going to open up the PocketBase folder. And then we're going to run /PocketBase serve. So then we can close these terminals. And now in the app folder, we can create a new folder called new. And inside of here, we're going to create two files, one called pluspage.server.ts and the other one called pluspage.svelte. So right here, at first, we're going to edit the pluspage.server.ts file. So at first, we're going to import all the things that we're going to need, and then we're going to create a load function that gets access to the locals. So in the locals, it allows us to access the auth store for the admin and also the user. So now we check if auth store is not valid, so if they're not logged in, or if they are not a valid user, we redirect them back to the authentication page. And if they do have all of these properties, like if they are a valid user, then we could just return them. We can let them into the page. So then right here, we're going to create an action. So now in this file, we're only going to create one action, and that's going to be the new post. And we're going to get access to the request to get access to the form data, obviously, and the locals to get access to the auth store. So then we're going to get access to the auth model, and we're going to validate it, checking to see if it's actually a validated user and if they are actually logged in. So now we're going to get the form data. We're going to get all the properties that we need. Then we're going to set a temporary variable called post ID, which we're going to use as a reference when we're going to go outside of the try catch block. So you see, let's create a try catch block. In this try catch block, I want to return some data, but I want to make sure that this post ID is separate from the try catch block because I want to redirect the user to something else. And inside the try catch block, you can't redirect the user. So then inside the try block, let's validate to make sure that the properties are actually strings and that they are actually valid. By the way, you could check out the link in the description to my GitHub just in case you need help following through, or you can't just be coding as fast as possible. But right here below this, we're going to get the parse tags. So we're going to parse the tags because everything that gets passed from us from the form data is a string. So then we're going to check if it's actually an array. Then we're going to create a temporary tags object, a temporary tags array. And then we're going to loop over the parse tags, making sure that each tag in the loop is a string. And if the validated tags already includes one of these tags, then it's duplicate, so we can't have that. So we're going to throw a new error and not letting the user go through. And if everything goes according to plan, we push this tag right here into the validated tags. So now we know that the tags are all strings and that there are no duplicates. So we're making sure to see that there are no more than 10 tags per post. And then we're going to create a new post with all of the metadata that we need. So then we're going to assign the post ID to the record.id. So we create the post and we assign the post ID to the record.id. So now if there's any errors, we're going to log it and we check if it's an instance of error and we just pass back the message. And if it's not, we just say a default message. And now as I said, if the post ID is a string, at least if it's not null, then we're going to redirect them to the post page that it actually corresponds to. Now, if the post ID is not a string, so if something wrong happened, we're going to throw redirect. So now we can close this file and let's open up the pluspage.svelte file. All right, so once you have this file open, we're going to create a script with the language property set to TS, and we're going to import the necessary things that we need, and we're going to get access to the data, which is basically the layout data that we served right here. So if you see my previous video, which I'm going to link up right now, or I linked up in the beginning of the video, we created this load function that applies to all of the routes inside of the app folder that allows us to get access to the auth model. And you see we get access to that data right here. You see auth model is a user undefined and authenticated is a boolean. And let's get some form data inputs, and these correspond to the ones inside the form action. So in the Svelte head, we're going to create the title for the post. We're going to create the title for this page. And then we're going to create an article. And inside here, we're going to create a form with the class of main and the action set to the action that we created previously. So then we're going to use the useEnhance function or the useEnhance action to append the tags to the form data, because honestly, the tags, I couldn't get it to work semantically with HTML, so I had to append them afterwards. So that's how it works. So then we're going to create a header for this form, and we're going to divide this header between the content, and inside the first input container, we're going to have the input trying to see that the title. So now we're going to input the title for the user, and then another input container for the language. And instead of an input is going to be a select. We're going to allow these choices, and you could add these choices according to the ones that are valid with highlight.js, but I found that these are all the ones that are most prominent. So and below, we're going to create another input container, which is just going to be for the code, and it's just going to be a normal text area, nothing too special. And one more input container that's going to be for the tags, and we're going to create a form that prevents default, so we're not going to re-render the whole page every time we submit this form that's inside this other form. So then we're going to check to see if the tags is a duplicate, or if the tags input is an empty string, or the tags length is over the 10. So we're just making sure to see if the tags are actually valid. So then if they are, we're going to append the new tag to the tags, and we're going to set the current tag input to an empty string. So then inside of here, we're going to create an input, and we're going to bind the value of the tag input, so we can always make sure that this tag input is always up to date with the value inside of this input. And then we're going to create a button just saying add tag, allowing us to submit this data. So then inside of here, we're going to create a tags container, which allows us to display the different tags that we have. And we're going to create it as each block, so it allows us to loop over the tags as we're creating them. And this else block allows us to see that if there are no tags to loop over, then we can just display a message. So then right here, for each one of these tags, we're going to create a tag element, and it's going to display the tag input, and it's just going to have a button that allows us to remove it. And by default, we're just going to display some text saying that please enter at least one tag for your post. So if there's no tags, we're going to allow this text to be rendered. So then right here, we're going to create a button with the variant primary, and conditionally, we're going to be disabling this, so we're not going to be able to submit it if the form data is not valid. So then let's create a style tag. Let's style the article so that it is aligned vertically. And the article is going to be aligned horizontally, and the main is going to be aligned vertically with some extra styles, for example, the border, etc. And then we're going to allow the styles for the header elements, the divider, the input container, which is just going to be a vertically aligned container with some gap in between the items. And we're going to style the input text area and select so that they look custom and they look good. And below this, let's style the tag form so that it is aligned horizontally. The text container, same thing, aligned vertically, but with some gap in between each of these tags. And now let's style the tag elements. So you see that they're pretty simple. We're going to add some borders, some background, form size, and display a flex. And we're going to style the button. By the way, like I said before, I don't care if I'm repeating myself, but you can find all this code in the link in the description. And now let's style the iconify icon. So the icons are going to be 16 pixels width and height. And if there are no tags, we're going to style it so that the message has an opacity of 0.7 or 70%. So now we can close this file, and now let's open up the terminal, and let's go to localhost. As you see, I'm logged in already, but because I haven't created the settings page or the profile page, I can't really see which account I'm logged into. So now let's create a new post, and let's title it test, and let's say this for TypeScript, and let's say const test is equal to new post, and then we're gonna create a new line saying console.log test, And then we're gonna create a comment saying this is a new post. And now let's add a tag saying whatever you want. New post. Wait. And let's remove this because that was a typo. New post. And let's say add. Right? And now we're gonna post the code snippet. And you see that since we haven't created the post page, we can't really render them out yet. But if we go to home, you see that we see it. And we could delete it, but we haven't created the delete form. We're going to create that in a future video. Alright, so in the previous video, we created the home page for the project, but in this video, we're actually going to create the post page so we can actually see the post individually. So then, before we get into any code, we're going to open up the terminal and run the command npm run dev. And then we're going to open up a new terminal instance and run the command. And we're going to open up the PocketBase folder. And we're going to run the command /PocketBase serve. So now, once both of these commands are done running, we can close the terminal. And in the app folder, let's create a new folder called posts. And in this folder, we're going to create a new file called pluspage.server.ts. Alright, so then we're going to import all the necessary things that we need. And then we're going to create a load function. And all we're going to do is redirect them to the home page. But I think this is a bug. We're going to remove the home page right here. We're going to remove home and just redirect them to /. So then we could close this file. Inside this post folder, we're going to create a new folder with called bracket ID and then close bracket, a route parameter called ID. So this allows us to display different posts depending on this ID, and this ID goes inside the route URL actually. So then inside of this ID folder, let's create a new file called pluspage.server.ts. Alright, so at first we're going to import the necessary things, and then we're going to create a load function, but this load function is kind of redundant. It doesn't really do anything. I just forgot to delete it before I publish this course. So that's just on me. So we're going to create the actions for this. We're going to create two actions, one to like the post and one to actually delete the post. So then the first one is going to be toggle liked, and it's going to take in three parameters, one called the locals, one called the parameters, and one called the URL. The parameters is just set to get access to the ID in the URL. And the URL obviously is to get the URL, and the locals is to get the actual instance of PocketBase for the action. So then we're going to create the auth model. Then we're going to get access to the auth model, and we're going to validate to see if it's actually a valid user and they're actually logged in. And if they're not, we're just going to redirect them to the authentication page. Then we're going to create a try catch block. And at first, we're going to get the record that they are actually, we're going to get the post that they are actually referencing. So as you see, we're getting the actual post that corresponds with the params.id. So we're expanding on the user, so we're getting the actual data for the user, not just a string with the ID of the user collection. So then we're going to get access to the post, and we're going to make sure to validate the post right here. This is just done to make sure that we assign the user so that it is not a string, so that it is actually the user object, so then we can actually validate the post correctly. So then we're going to check if we already liked this post, and if we did, we're going to say that we're going to remove the like. But if we haven't liked, so if we haven't liked, we're going to add the like. So this auth model.id, as you remember from the first video, when we set up the PocketBase, you see that the likes is actually a reference to the user's collection, and it could be multiple of them. So this auth model.id is just referring to the ID of our user document. So then we are either adding it or subtracting it. So then if there is an error, we're going to log it and we're going to return the message. And if there is no message, we're just going to say that there was an unknown error. And if everything goes according to plan, we check to see if there's any redirect, and then we just redirect them back. So now the one below it, we're going to create a new action called delete post. And here we're going to do the same thing, get access to the auth model and validate to see if they are actually logged in. And then we're going to create a try catch block saying in here the logic. So we're going to expand on the user. We're going to get access to the actual post, and we're going to validate to see if it actually is a valid post. And then we're going to see if the user actually owns this post. And if they don't, we're going to throw a new error saying that they cannot delete the post. And once that we validated to see that everything is correct, we go ahead and delete the post. So then if there are any errors, we just send back the message, and just like usual, we just send unknown error if we don't know if the error is actually an error. So then we just throw redirect back to slash. So now you can close this file, and inside the ID folder, you can create a new file called pluspage.ts. And here we're going to create the load function so we can actually load the data for the post. So at first, we import everything we need, and then we create a load function getting access to the parameters ID right here. So we get access to the params inside the URL, and then we get access to the PB instance, and we're checking to see if the actual PB instance is actually valid and not null. And then we create a try catch block so that we're going to input the logic inside of this try catch block. Then we create an asynchronous function called getPost where we're going to get the post. And then we're going to check the PB instance again. But the reason we check the PB instance again is just because TypeScript was being really buggy and it wasn't like showing the IntelliSense for this PB instance. So just to show the IntelliSense, I put this validation to make sure that TypeScript knows that this PB instance is actually valid. So then we get a reference to the post while expanding on the user, and as usual, we get access to the temporary post and we expand on the user. We say that the user is the expanded user. So by default, this user is just a string, but this expanded user is actually the data for the user. So we're just assigning the user to the expanded user. And then right here, we're going to validate the post, saying that if it's not valid, post was not found. And then we just return the post. So then, if everything goes according to plan, we're just going to await the post inside of our load function. And if there are any errors, we just say that the post was not found. So then we can close this file, and inside the ID folder, we're going to create one last file called pluspage.svelte right here. So then we're going to create a script with the language property set to TS, and then we're going to import the necessary data that we need, and then we're going to export let data saying that we want access to the data that we get passed from the load function. So then we put the title of the post as the title right here in the svelte head, and then we create a container div, and then inside here we're going to create an article saying that if the user was not found or if the post was not found, we're going to say post not found, and if it is found, we're just going to input the post component, and we're going to pass in the auth model and the post data. And then we're going to style these components saying that the div is going to be display flex and take full width of the actual container that it's containing. And then the article, same thing, but it's going to have a max width, and it's going to have flex row 1, and it's going to have a different background color than the container. So you can close this file, and let's go open the terminal right here, and we can open the dev server just to see the results. So as you saw in the previous video, we created this form right here. So then let's open it up right here. Let's go over to PocketBase, and let's go over to the admin UI. And then if you go over to the post collection and go here, let's copy this ID, and then inside the URL you can say posts slash, and you can input the ID right after, and you see that it pops up by itself. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video served you value. I hope you're looking forward to my next video. Like, subscribe, and comment. Alright, so in the previous video we created the post page, and in this video we're going to create the profiles page. Hold on just one second. I am offering free coaching to those of you who need help in JavaScript development, Flutter development, and most front-end or full-stack JavaScript frameworks. If you're not opposed to receiving some help, message me through Discord at 8dang. I'll be sure to include my tag below, but remember, I might not be able to help with everything, but I'll try my best. But with that out of the way, let's get back into the video. So the first thing we're going to do is open up the terminal, and wait, let's expand this right here, and we're going to run the command npm run dev, and they're going to open up a new terminal instance and open up the PocketBase folder. Open up PocketBase, and then we're going to run the command /PocketBase serve, and then we can close these terminals. So then inside the app folder we can create a new folder called profiles, and inside of here we create a new file called pluspage.server.ts. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is import all the necessary things that we need. Then we're going to create a load function, and we're going to take in the locals because we want to get access to the PocketBase. And then we're going to create an if statement inside the load function, and then we're going to check to see if the auth store is actually valid and they are actually logged in. So then if they are logged in, if they aren't logged in, we're going to redirect them to the auth page. But if they are logged in, we're going to redirect them to their profile. Remember, every user has an ID, and if you redirect them to the profile / user ID, like their user ID, then it will take them to the profile page. So then we can save this file, and then we can close it. So then in the profiles folder, let's create a new folder called bracket ID, closing bracket. And here, let's create a new file called pluspage.ts. So at first, we're going to import all the necessary things that we need. Then we're going to create a load functions and not take in the locals, but we're not going to take in the locals because this is a pluspage.ts file and not a pluspage.server file. And the only reason we can get access to the locals file is because many of the load functions that we created are just server load functions, but this one runs both on the server and on the client. So then we're going to get access to the parameters. So this is going to allow us to get access to this ID parameter in the URL. And then we're going to create and then we're going to get access to the current state of the PB store. And then we're going to check to see if it's actually valid. And if it's not, we're just going to say that the result was not found. And then below here, we're going to create a check catch block. We're going to query the user. And then we're going to validate to see if the user is actually valid. And then we're going to create a function saying that we want to get all the posts of this user. So then we say we get the full list of the collection of the posts that all have the user of the user ID. So basically, if you remember from the video where we set up PocketBase, the user is just a reference to a user document. And if you just say equals to whatever this is, remember to wrap this around parentheses, then it will query all of the posts that have the same user ID, and we will expand on each one of these documents on the user. All right. So then right here, we're going to loop through each one of the posts and we're going to modify it. We're going to make sure to expand each one of them, and we're going to be able to validate the post like this. But because we have to do these extra steps, the reason we do these extra steps is because by default, the post that user is a string and we need to assign it to the actual user data. So once it's done, we say right here, we just return the post appended to the previous results. And then once we get that, we just return the posts. Then we have to catch all the errors. And if there are errors, we're just going to say that the result was not found. So now we can close this file. And inside the ID folder, we could create a plus page.svelte file. So then we're going to create a script with the line property set to TS and import all the necessary things. Then we're going to get access to the load functions result right here in the data property. And then we're going to get access to the result right here. But by default, this result is going to be a promise. And then we're going to await it right here inside the code. So before we do that, we're going to create a svelte head and say that the title is the name of the actual user. And then we're going to create a container div that's going to contain the full data of the user. Then we're going to create a header. And then we say if the user exists, or if the user that we queried actually exists, we're going to say that we display the user photo first of all. And then we say that if they have a user photo, we're going to render it out. And if they don't, we're just going to have a default icon. And then we're going to have an H1 right here saying that the username. And then we're going to have the user bio below the user information. And we're going to divide it using a divider, and we're just going to display it. And if there's no user found, we're going to say user was not found. So once we query this, we check to see if the result.post is true or if it's not null. And then we await it. And while we're awaiting it, we're saying that we're loading the post. And then we're going to loop through each post once we get the actual result. And then we get an article for each one of these posts. And we display the post component that we created in the previous video. And inside the else block, so if there are no posts, we're going to say no post found. So then we're going to create a style element. We're going to style the container div so it takes up the full height of the container. And then we're going to style the article and header so they both have similar styles, similar background color, etc. And they're going to have different gaps. And below this, we're going to style the divider, the first row, user information, H1s, the image, and the Iconify icon. If you have trouble keeping up with the code, you could always find the link in the description and you could follow through using that. So we could save this file and then we could close it and open up the terminal and open up the local host. So right here, let's go to our profile and you see that we can see the post that we made in the previous video. We could even like it and we could even delete it. You see that right there. It sent us back to the home page. And we could go to profile like that. Alright, so in the previous video, we created the profiles route so you could view other people's profiles. But in this video, which is going to be the last video, we're going to create the settings page for the actual application. So the first thing we're going to do is open up the terminal and run npm run dev. And then we're going to open up a new terminal instance, and inside of there, we're going to open up the PocketBase folder and then run /PocketBase serve. So then we could close these terminals, and then in the app folder, we could create a new folder called settings, and then we could create a new file here called pluspage.svelte. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is create a module script so that we could export the actual auth model key so that the other child components can have access to the auth model. So then we're going to actually import the necessary components, and then we're going to export that data getting access to the load function, which we're going to create later in this video. And then we're going to set the context for the child components for the auth model key, and then we're going to set the data to the auth model that we're going to get passed down from the data. So then we're going to create this file head, and we're going to title this page the settings. And then we're going to create an article containing an account settings and a container that contains two components, the profile and the security component. And then we're going to style each of these article and the right components so that they're vertically aligned. And then we're going to do a media query saying that if the width of the screen is greater than 700 pixels, we're going to say that the article has a display of a flex direction of row, which means that it's horizontally aligned, and that the right has an actual minimum width. So we can save this. By the way, you can ignore these errors right here. We're going to create these components in this video, but we're going to create it later on. So then in the settings page, in the settings folder, let's create a new file called account settings.svelte. So then we're going to create a script with the language property set to TS, and then we're going to import all the necessary things, and you can see that we're importing get context from Svelte, and then we're getting access to the auth model from the parent component, which is going to be right here, the page.svelte file. The parent component sets the context with the auth model key that we're importing, and then we're getting the context. A bio tag that's going to reference the auth model's bio. And then we're going to create a section with the class of account settings that's going to contain a header, and then it's going to contain some form actions. The first one is going to be the name, and obviously it's just going to be an input, and the default value is just going to be the name that's already on the user. Then the next one is going to be the email, so the user can change the email using this form. And then right here, obviously this is going to be a type of email in the input, and the default value is going to be the email from the auth model. And then we're going to create one last one called the bio, so we could change the bio of the user right here, and then it's gonna have form inputs right here. And in this input, we're gonna add some extra logic saying that we're gonna bind the value of this input to the bio variable that we created right here. So the default value is already the bio of the user. So then we're gonna listen for the on input, and we're gonna make sure that the input isn't greater, that the input's length isn't greater than 150 characters. Then right here, we're just going to create a paragraph tag that just displays the length of the bio, and then we're going to create a button that just submits this form. Then we're going to style the component, styling first the headers and the divider. Then we're going to style the section, the form. And by the way, if you're having trouble keeping up, you could always find the GitHub link in the description and copy the code from there. Then we're going to also style the inputs, the form input, so that it is horizontally aligned, and also the form.bio is going to be vertically aligned, and then the input for the form bio is going to be special. And obviously the label is going to have the actual styles that the input has by default, but you'll see in a little bit how that looks like. So then right here, we're going to style the form.bio, the paragraph right here that displays the amount of characters inside the form, and that's it. Now we could close this file. So in the settings folder, we're going to create a new file called change profile picture.svelte. So at first, we're going to create a script tag with the language property set to TS, and then we're going to import the necessary components, get access to the auth model, and also create an event dispatcher so that the parent component of this component can actually listen to the events from this component. So we're going to get access to a file list, which you'll see in a second why this is important. So then we're going to create a div that takes up the full length of the screen, and whenever it pops up over the screen, it's going to have a transition of fade. So then right here, we're going to have a section with the onClick set to stop propagation so that this div doesn't get triggered, this onClick property doesn't get triggered when you click on this section. So then we're going to create a header in this section saying that we want to change your profile picture if you open up this section. So we're obviously going to have an icon that allows us to close this modal, and then a form with the enc type set to multipart / form data, so that we can actually send pictures back and forth from the server. So then we're going to create a label, and then it's going to be upload photo. Just this label is just going to be for the input, which is right here, but it's going to be hidden. So then right here, we're going to create a file list. So if the files from this input are not null, we're going to display a variable. We're going to display a button that says confirm or cancel. The cancel is just going to close this modal, but this confirm is going to submit the form and redirect us back. And then if the user has a photo but the file list hasn't been uploaded, we're going to have a form that allows them to remove their current profile picture. So then we're going to style this component saying that the div is going to be absolutely positioned on the screen, and it's going to take up the full width and height of the screen. So then we're going to create this section so that it actually stands out from the div, and we're going to have the header so that it has a display of flex, the header, the icon, the form, obviously aligned vertically, the label, and also the hide property, the input, and the input is going to have a display of none because the label is going to be the thing that we actually need to press. So we can close this file. So I'm going to create a new file inside the settings folder called profile.svelte. So I'm going to create a script tag with a language property set to TS. We're going to import everything. We're going to get access to auth model. And then we're going to create a local variable that is going to hold the context to see if this change profile picture component is going to be displayed on the screen or not. So we're going to check to see if the PB store is actually not undefined. And then we're going to create a section with the header profile. And then if the user has a photo, we're going to display it. Or if not, we're just going to display a default icon. So then we're going to display the name of the user right next to the profile photo. And then right here, we're going to allow them to change their profile photo with this button. And if this button allows them to open the modal to change their profile picture, and if they are changing their profile picture, we're going to display the change profile picture right here. So then we're going to style this component saying that the h1 is going to have a font size of 24 pixels, the section, obviously, and the profile right here, and the profile content, the image, obviously styled custom, and the iconify icon. We're going to have the name set to bold, and then we're going to save, and then we can close this file right now. And then we can create another file inside the settings page called security.svelte. So we're going to create a script tag. Then we're going to import enhance from $app/form to enhance our forms, obviously. And then we're going to create a section with the header set to security. And we're going to have two forms, one to log out and one to delete our account forever. So then we're going to create a style property. And then we're going to style the headers and the divider. And then we're going to style the section. And then we're going to style the form. So now we can close this file. And inside the settings folder, we create a new file called pluspage.server.ts. So then we're going to import the necessary modules. We're going to create a load function and get access to the local, so we get access to the PocketBase object. And then we're going to check to see if the user is actually valid and logged in. And if they're not, we're going to redirect them to the login page. But if they are, we're just going to return the auth model from the load function. So then we're going to create the form actions right here. And then the first action we're going to create is the logout action. So I'm going to check to see if the user is actually logged in. And if they're not, we're going to redirect them to the login page. And then we're going to create a try catch block, which we're going to have the logic inside the try block. And if anything throws, we're going to catch the errors inside the catch block. So then the only thing we're going to do is just clear the all store. And then if there are any errors, we're going to specify to say that the error is from the logout. And if the error is not the instance of error, so if the error is some unambiguous object, we're just going to have a default message. And then we're going to throw a redirect if everything goes good. And if everything goes according to plan, the user will be logged out. So we redirect them to the auth page. So then right here, we're going to create another form where, just like before, we're going to check to see if the user actually logged in. And we're going to check to see if they have the actual form data. So we're going to get the photo from the form data. And we're going to validate the form data right here. And we're going to upload. And then we're going to update the user record right here. And then we're going to specify to say that the errors, if there are any, come from the change profile photo. And in here, and we're going to have one thing different from the logout page, which is that we're going to redirect them to the settings page instead of the auth page. So then we're going to create another one which is very similar. All these functions are very similar in the case that we validate to see if the user logged in. We do the logic inside the try block. We specify the errors, and then we redirect them back to the settings page or the auth page. But in here, all we're doing is just removing the photo from the PocketBase user record. So in here, we're gonna create another name. By the way, if you're looking, and same thing here, I'm just repeating myself a lot, but the only interesting thing about this action is that we're gonna validate the actual form data, and then we're gonna have a specific action, but everything else is the same. Same thing here, to change email, we're gonna validate, and we're gonna update. And obviously, all of these have their specific errors. You can always find the code in the GitHub link in the description. And right here, change bio, same thing as before. And here, delete account. And delete account is actually pretty similar to the logout function in just the fact that we're deleting the account first before clearing the Auth store. And here, we're also going to redirect them to Auth page so they can log into a new user or create a new account. So now we can save this. And then we can open up the terminal and open up the local. So then right here, we're going to go to create an account. We're going to log into our account that we created in the previous video, or if you want, you could create an account always. So right here, once you have this, you go to the settings page, and now let's see how it works. So the first thing we're going to do is change the name to test. We're going to do it to new test. We're going to update name, and you see that it works. And now let's update our email, and say test@email.com. And now to see the changed email, we're going to have to go to the admin UI and log in. And inside the users, you see that our email is changed. So right here in the bio, you could put whatever text you want. And you could go to the profile page right here, and you can see that our bio is displayed like that. So now we could go back here and we could upload a photo for the profile picture. So then once we have a picture uploaded, we can confirm or cancel. So let's confirm, and you see that we have the picture uploaded. Now we could remove the current picture and we're back to square one. So in the security, we could either log out or delete account, but let's first log out and let's log in with the new email that we put. So it's going to be test@email.com, test. So let's go to settings and let's delete our account. So right here, if we want to delete the account, we always have to delete all of our posts. So we have to delete this post first, and we could go to settings, and now we could actually delete the account. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoy the series. Let me know what you think about this fast-paced content. Let me know if I should slow down in future videos. But as always, leave a like down below, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.